welcome to another edition of the Culture's Corner. Thank you so very much for joining us live as well as on demand. To all of my listeners all over the world, we surely appreciate all of your support and your listenership. Thank you for those that are watching on our broadcast TV, Ustream, YouTube. Thank you so much for those that are watching us is much more than doing well anyway. So today we want to talk about the transition versus progress versus transition. We've been talking about the pretentiousness in progress, and how that pretentiousness is a part of the human way, but how we have adopted what was meant to be temporary to something more permanent and have skewed our outlook on life, causing us perhaps to live life more on default mode or also in defense mode, always trying to tell people what you are not in defense to try to convince them of what you are, but instead of having a peace and security within to be able to say fewer words, impress fewer people, and simply live purposefully and aim for destiny. We got a lot of trash going on. You see, Monday and Thursday is trash days, perhaps here at the office, at the studio, perhaps in your area, Wednesdays and Fridays. You know what I'm saying? But make sure we take stuff to the curb. We're not doing that. We're backed up. We're not paying the bill. We're borrowing from our strengths to pay our weaknesses. And so today, what I want to talk to you about is how that there's a difference between progress and transition. And as we said on last session, you don't want to, anytime you want a secure change, anytime you want a secure change, a change you can believe in, as one politician said, a change that takes root, and a change that takes off. A change, and make no mistake about it. Most of us don't like change until we get there, and then we say, "Oh, this is what change is." Until change has been experienced in the form of transition, we don't know what change is, because we're in process, or we're in progress toward the transition. But that's what I want to talk about today. Is that? But I want to finish this pre-qualifier. If we're going to have change, myself included in all of this that we're talking about, then we know that we have to sacrifice an element of pretentiousness, an element of hypocrisy. We know we have to become truthful. More than a fourth of us has to become truthful enough to authenticate the desire. To authenticate the desire. If you have a desire to do something and you've reached that desire, and the desire is biting at you, and there's bitterness and there's bitter water in the whole experience, that means that you didn't authorize or authenticate that desire. You didn't authenticate that desire. I don't know why I stumbled over that word. I know you guys are cracking up right now. Okay. But the point is, we want to talk about how that pretentiousness that fourth that we talked about, or more than a fourth, of real truth, facing real truth about ourselves, because we are the common denominators in every situation. And if it's to be, it's up to me, and I must make the change. That does not mean that I do this without divine help, but it means that I include divine help, for those of you that may be listening. But at the same time, why would you, I wanted to piggyback on last session, why would you go into discussions about your final outcome with folks who ain't truthful, who are walking in the same, if not higher, deeper, wider level of pretentiousness than you are? And we're all walking in it. In your progress, why would you be discussing your plans, your final outcome, what you want things to look like in the final transition? Why would you be discussing that with someone who has perhaps the same level, if not more or less level of pretentiousness, who are not open to truth, who are not open to discovery, who are not open to improvement? And so therefore, by virtue of the disbursement of too many words can cause you to abort your progress and fail to meet your transition. Too many words to the wrong ears, because these are all gates, the sensory gates, the eyes and what we see, and the ears and what we hear, and on, thoughts and what we think. These are all gates. These are all gateways into the soul, into the dark room, And we all got to guard our gates. So don't trip. We all got to do it. We all have to do it. But my word and my encouragement to you today is that you have to guard your progress until it becomes a transitional place. I like that. You have to guard your progress until it becomes a transitional place. If you do not guard your progress, you will always be starting over. You will always have to hit the restart. There's nothing wrong with starting over if you have to do it. If you have to do it, you got to do what you got to do. But you don't want to keep starting over and keep starting over and keep starting over, because, see, I always say this, one of my famous sayings is a saying that I disseminated on a radio show that I created called the CATL show. And that is, on the wings of momentum, resources ride. Write that down. On the wings of momentum, resources ride. What do I mean? See, progress that has to keep hitting the restart button and never reaching the plateaus closer to the plateau of transition. Progress that keeps having to hit the reset button like that does not carry momentum. Well, momentum is something that is built. I don't have time to do a show or session on momentum, but I could, and I have done it in the past. Maybe on YouTube, I don't know, or Ustream. But momentum is that's a double down word right there. That word is right there. You can make something with that word, momentum. And so progress carries with it a certain level of momentum. I'm talking about For More for Life campaign, for those of you that may be wondering, what the heck is he talking about? For More for Life. Not talking about the external more, but talking about the internal more, that automatically, because and on default, by which brings more to us. For More for Life. But we're managing from the inside out, not from the outside in. So the progress that we make in life has to have momentum. And every time we have to hit the restart button, for instance, I hate to, this is different for every person, but I'm just giving you a generality, if you will. Try to make sure I don't label things at people. If you have a child, generally, it takes a block of time out of your life for extreme concentration to tend to the process and the progression and the developmental needs of that child. That's what you're supposed to do anyway. A lot of folks don't do it. They just go to work anyway, throw the baby off on somebody else, and then wonder why they got problems in 20 years. But you're supposed to, tend to the developmental needs and bond and all of those great things. But when you don't when you have a child and you realize you have to do that, it eats up blocks of time. blocks of time. You know, I want to say really 5 to 10 years. I really want to say a decade. A block at a time, a decade at a time. You know, and whatever you ignore, it comes back around. Nobody gets away, and everybody ends up paying, you know, for the shortcomings of others. Because why? We live in a communal society, let alone a democracy. What the hell? We live in a democracy. Guess what? That means that we often, more than not, pay for other folks' mistakes through our tax dollars. More often than not, that is also robbed. But anyway, the progress, and it's the same way with a relationship. If you got particular goals, and a lot of ladies have confessed this to me, that if you got a particular goal and you're trying to do something right, and you know, you got this itch and hormone and the whole nine, right? And so you get into this relationship and it doesn't work, so you hit the reset button. You know what you wanted to do, so you get back to the focus of it and all that. Well, see, if you keep pushing the reset, relationships take 3 to 7 year block times out of your life. I'm not talking about the sensual part. That's a whole nother conversation. That takes, I want to say, 1 to 3 years of block time out of your life. And I could talk about that, but that's not what we're focusing on today. So relationships take, you know, I want to say 3 to 7 year block time. I'm talking about real relationships, not flings, okay? And then the booty calls, they take 1 to 3 year block times, because what you think is not occurring is still occurring. Just because you don't see and feel it happening doesn't mean things are not happening. In fact, what happens with the, let me just talk about progress and momentum now for a minute, because we're trying to get you to transition. I'm trying to get you with the booty calls. What happens is the first 7 times that you have the 7 partners, or the 3 partners, or the 4 partners, or the 2 partners, nothing may happen the first year. Remember I said first it takes 1 to 3 year block time out. I mean, you keep messing around with a bunch of folks, you know, you count 3 times 4, that's 12 years before you know you lost 12 years fooling around with folks. Why? Because of over sensuality. You see what I'm saying? And so what happens is nothing may happen at first in these block times. You know, the booty call 1 to 3 years, nothing may happen the first year. Nothing may happen the second year, but in the third year, because karma is a punk. I mean, karma is a mother. You know what I'm saying? It always comes back around. And you shouldn't fool yourself to think that you can put out negative vibes, negative actions, immoral actions. Whether you believe in God or not, the Bible or not, is irrelevant at this point. What's relevant is, are you taking care of yourself and the ones around you? And are you being good to yourself? Or are you only focused on your sensuality to the degree that it now becomes your progress and transitional state of mind and conditioning, rather than the other things that would make our community more balanced? That's why our community is not balanced, because that's all we think about is sensuality. I mean, that's just the truth. So back to progress. Progress, as you move forward, you want to protect blocks of time. We're going to be engaged in relationships of some kind, whether it be parent child, whether it be mother daughter, brother sister, uncle auntie, and all of our relationships take blocks of time out of our lives, especially when they go wrong. For whatever reasons, they take blocks of time out of our lives, and they impede progress. So when I said earlier that you have to hit the reset button, the reset button is the conscious decision to move on. It doesn't mean consciously move on without. I'm not talking about the negative. I'm just talking about the mental decision, the mental conditioning, the mental coaching that you give yourself to move on. I gotta move on. I gotta graduate, or I gotta find a new job now that I've graduated. I've gotta get my kids through college, or whatever you're moving on to, so that you can finally enjoy a state or a condition of transition, a place of transition. A change that you can believe in, a change that you can identify. So the point that I'm making today is this, that often in the progress, the pretentiousness interrupts the progress, steals the momentum from the progress, and voids our ability to reach on schedule the place of transition. And so what we have to do, we have to guard that. We have to guard that. On last session, I talked about guarding it through learning how to be more studious. Stop talking and telling our dreams to our girlfriends and our guy friends and our close, those that you think are so hip and close to you. You know, victims, this is just one aspect. Please don't send me a bunch of emails on this, but victims talk a lot. People who are suffering from the residue of victimization will always say more than they should. Let me say that again. People that suffer from the residue of victimization will always say more than they should. And those words that are spoken out into the atmosphere of pretentious living, particularly in the Western culture where we're more caught up in doing and not being, now confirm. They confirm. You know, somebody say, well, I got a confirmation. Of course. The pretentiousness that is in the air is so thick that you can get a confirmation for whatever you want. You can get a confirmation. I got a confirmation. I'm supposed to do this. Are you kidding me? There's so much thick hypocrisy in the air in the Western culture that you can get a confirmation for whatever you want. Stop trying to get a legitimate reason to do what you want to do, and just do whatever the heck you want to do. And when you're sick and tired of doing what you want to do, then you come back. But don't expect to come back and the progress will be easy, because to build momentum takes integrity. If I may just add that, it takes a bit more integrity than we are used to using, you know, or giving. To build progress takes integrity, because at the end of the day, I am, say this with me, I am the common denominator in all my circumstances. In all of my circumstances, in all of my situations, I am the common denominator. I can't blame him, her, them, they. I can't even boast. And I'm getting to my second point that I want to make today. I can't even boast about this, that, or the other until I have reached my. That's the second point I want to make to talk about the transition. The second point I want to say today is this, and I said this on last session. Why are you boasting? If you make milestone, if you make historic, identifiable milestone markers in your progressive plan, in your progress, in your day-to-day progress, it is best to minimize those. I have found. Minimize the boasting until you reach the state of transition. Because even in the boasting in the state of progress can be impeded by pretentiousness. Boasting in the state of progress, you're not at where you the outcome has not been reached in your boasting. The outcome has not been reached in your bragging. It kind of reminds me of the test with Abraham. The Bible says he was fully persuaded, and here he is believing for something, and along the way, mind you, he tried out a few methods that took blocks of time. You get it? Blocks of time, blocks of his time. Because anytime you have an Ishmael, anytime we do things our way, we will always have blocks of time out of our lives now given to the way we had to have. I felt that right there. Anytime we get our way, however you want to deny it, that's not my issue. You can't deny what the circumstances has identified. You can't keep denying. You can say it's not true all you want to, but it's sitting right there on the table. The promise and the fact that you had to do it your way. We all have to face that dual sword, if you will. And so with the situation with Abraham, you see that along the way now, I'm going to try to do X, Y, Z. And then he had to hit the reset button because even though he had Ishmael, that was not the promise. And so therefore, you're still in the state of progression and not in the state of transition. I need some help right there. So back to my point. So why are you boasting, and why are you bragging, or why are you even carrying on an extraterrestrial, if you will, conversation about a progression that keeps having a restart or a reset and lose momentum over trying to impress, hang with, get confirmed by others who are walking in the same pretentiousness that you yourself will deny? And you wonder why you can't get to where you need to be. And you wonder why you can't accomplish more than you have already accomplished. Because every level of life requires the same portal of truth to be entered, the subconscious curtain to be drawn back, an evaluation of the common denominator in every situation, which is me or which is you and I. Every level requires the same thing. And where you are covenant minded, what do I mean by that? Where you are walking with someone in a relationship by virtue of a great covenant or by virtue of a covenant by default, you are impeded through the ways and the conditionings and the attitudes of your partner. And you must learn, like I have had to learn, to maneuver around, through, over, and under the attitudes, altitudes, conditionings of your partner, that you may survive less interruptions and less restarts. And you become such a force of change, such a force of impactful and influential progression in how you carry yourself and how you are consistent and how your regimen is, that all of a sudden you begin to win others toward the desire for change, that they may desire the outcomes that you're able to produce, and then they begin to inquire and ask questions of how you came or became or accomplished what you have done, because they see the difference. The difference. They see the difference, and they begin to inquire, and they begin to cooperate. I felt that right there. They begin to cooperate, and they begin to partner. Some people partner so that they won't have to be questioned. You got that happens in the church a lot, where if I give $100,000, nobody will ask me why I got 3 girls on my arm, and then I come to church with my wife. You feel me? I'm gonna leave that alone. But progression cannot be constantly restarted. The reset button can only be hit but so many times before you have so many blocks of time. You look up, 10 years gone by, 12 years have gone by, 7 years have gone by, 5 years have gone by, and you still are not in the place of transition. You still have not moved to where you had desired or imagined you'd be. And you may have more stuff. That's part of the Western culture, really, to be honest with you. But the ability to increase materially in the Western culture, I'm finding out that's easy to do. I mean, for some people they have it rough, but pretty much we have a system where everybody can advance, even in the worst case scenario, And so what deteriorates the American democracy and the transition of where we're standing in the world, for instance, on education, is our lack of inner truth and inner democracy and inner freedom. I'm going to pause right there. And see, the internal affects the external. I don't care how you deny it. Not the external just affecting the internal, but the internal state of man, the internal state of women, the internal state of home, families, couples, children, affect the external. Because we bring all of these things to our dynamic environments. And we all have to find the courage to hit the reset button when violence happens. Hit the reset button when she walks out. Have to hit the reset button because he didn't pay the bills. Have to hit the reset button because she's on drugs. Have to hit the reset button because he just wants sex and no commitment. Have to keep hitting the reset. Never, ever, ever reaching the plateau of transition, but always progressing towards something, but having been interrupted and having momentum cut off at the height of your momentous movements, slain by sensual desire, slain by verbal insults, slain. Momentum, talking about the momentum slain by pretentiousness. You got to know that the people around you are walking, and I don't care how much you think of them respectfully and honor them. Every one of us have a level, and also by default being in the Western culture, because we are more into doing and not being. I have an announcement for you. My announcement is this. This can be your announcement. I'm not going to be the person that you expect me to be anymore. So I say my apologies now. And all of us should be preparing to make that change. We are on day 27 for More of a Life campaign. We got a few more days to go, and you got to make a decision. Because anytime you're going to run for more, it's got to be for life. I want to thank you so much for following us on Spreaker, Facebook. I want to thank you for following us on YouTube, Ustream. Shout out to VoiceCast, listeners, viewers. Shout out to iBroadcast TV and other syndicated places. It's out there the radio. Thank you so very much. We have new website. USA TV iBroadcasting Network. You're listening to SIBN